Most people think a new year requires a new goal, a new plan, a new strategy. But here's the truth most people avoid. If you don't upgrade your mind, nothing else upgrades with it. You can change your job, your city, your routine, even the people around you, and still feel stuck, because the real system running your life isn't your calendar or your bank account, it's your thinking. And in 2026, the world won't reward the busiest people. It will reward the clearest ones. If you stay with me until the end of this speech, you won't just hear ideas, you'll hear a framework. One that helps you think better, decide faster, and stay strong when motivation disappears. This isn't about hype. It's about mental alignment. And once that clicks, everything else follows. Clarity comes before confidence, and this is where real mental strength begins. Most people believe confidence appears first and clarity follows, but life proves the opposite again and again. When your mind is clear, confidence becomes a natural outcome. When it isn't, even the smallest decisions feel heavy. The truth is, stress is rarely caused by having too much to do. It's caused by not knowing what truly matters. Confusion creates noise, and noise drains your energy long before action ever does. Think about how often you feel overwhelmed. It's usually not because the task is impossible, but because everything feels equally important. When everything is urgent, nothing is prioritized. Your mind jumps from one thought to another, never fully present, never fully committed. This constant mental switching creates anxiety, exhaustion, and doubt. Clarity, on the other hand, simplifies life. It doesn't remove challenges, but it removes unnecessary tension. It gives your mind a direction, and direction creates calm. In 2026, the most powerful mental shift you can make is to stop asking, "What should I do next?" and start asking, "Why does this matter?" The first question keeps you busy. The second one keeps you aligned. When you chase tasks without understanding their purpose, you become reactive. You respond to emails, expectations, and pressure instead of choosing your path intentionally. But when you understand why something matters, you gain control over your attention. You stop reacting and start deciding. Clarity begins with values. Not the ones you say out loud, but the ones you actually live by. Your calendar tells the truth. Your habits tell the truth. If you feel mentally scattered, it's often because your actions are disconnected from what you believe matters most. This internal misalignment creates friction. Your mind senses the conflict even when you don't consciously acknowledge it. Once you clarify what you truly value, decisions become filters instead of battles. You don't have to think harder, you simply choose what aligns. A clear mind doesn't mean you have all the answers. It means you know which questions deserve your energy. Many people waste years trying to solve the wrong problems. They try to fix symptoms instead of causes. They chase productivity instead of purpose. But clarity forces honesty. It asks you to look at your life and say, what am I really building? And is this moving me closer to the person I want to become? These questions are uncomfortable, but they are freeing. When your why is clear, motivation becomes less important. You no longer rely on feeling inspired to take action. You act because the direction makes sense. This reduces internal resistance. Instead of arguing with yourself every morning, your mind cooperates. Decisions get simpler not because life gets easier, but because you've eliminated options that don't matter. Fewer choices mean less mental fatigue. Less mental fatigue means more focus. Clarity also changes how you experience pressure. Pressure doesn't disappear, but it stops feeling personal. When you know why you're doing something, obstacles feel like part of the process rather than signs of failure. You don't panic at setbacks because your purpose anchors you. Your mind stops asking, what if this doesn't work? And starts asking, what can I learn from this? That shift alone reduces stress more than any productivity hack ever could. A clear mind creates emotional stability. When you're unclear, emotions run the show. Doubt grows louder. Fear feels convincing. You overthink small details because there's no larger framework guiding you. Clarity gives context. It allows you to zoom out and see the bigger picture. When something goes wrong, you don't spiral because you understand where it fits in the long-term vision. This perspective keeps your emotions in check and your actions intentional. Another hidden benefit of clarity is boundaries. When you know what matters, saying no becomes easier. You stop overcommitting to please others or to avoid discomfort. Every yes has a cost, and clarity helps you choose wisely. You protect your time, your energy, and your focus because you understand their value. This isn't selfish, it's strategic. A mentally upgraded person doesn't try to do everything. They do the right things consistently. Clarity also builds self-trust. Each clear decision reinforces the belief that you know where you're going. This trust compounds. The more aligned actions you take, the more confident you feel in your judgment. Confidence then isn't loud or performative. It's quiet and grounded. It shows up as calm in uncertainty and patience and delay. It's the confidence that comes from knowing you're not wasting your life chasing distractions. As 2026 unfolds, the world will demand more of your attention than ever before. Information will be louder. Expectations will be higher. Opinions will be everywhere. Without clarity, your mind will be pulled in every direction. But with clarity, you remain centered. You don't need to respond to everything because you know what deserves your response. You don't feel behind because you're not racing against others. You're moving toward something meaningful. When decisions get simpler, your mind gets quieter. And in that quiet, you find focus, resilience, and peace. Clarity isn't about controlling the world around you. It's about understanding yourself well enough to move through it with purpose. That is the real mental upgrade. Motivation feels powerful, but it is unreliable. It rises and falls with mood, energy, and circumstances. Some days it shows up strong, making everything feel possible. Other days it disappears without warning, leaving you stuck, frustrated, and questioning yourself. This is why relying on motivation keeps people trapped in cycles of starting and stopping. Discipline, on the other hand, does not depend on emotion. It is structural. It is built into how you live, how you decide, and how you act, regardless of how you feel in the moment. Motivation shows up when life is easy, when progress is visible, when praise is coming, when the path feels clear. Motivation feels natural, but life is rarely like that for long. Real life is inconvenient. It is repetitive. It is full of resistance, delay, and uncertainty. Discipline is what carries you through those moments. It doesn't ask if you feel ready. It reminds you that you already decided. And once a decision is made, action becomes non-negotiable. A mental upgrade begins the moment you stop waiting to feel ready. Readiness is often a disguise for fear. It sounds reasonable, but underneath it is hesitation. Discipline cuts through that hesitation by shifting the question from, do I feel like doing this, to, did I commit to doing this? That shift removes emotion from the equation. You don't negotiate with yourself every day. You simply execute what you've already chosen. Discipline creates stability in your mind. When you depend on motivation, your mental state is always fluctuating. One bad day can derail an entire week. One setback can convince you to quit altogether. Discipline removes that fragility. It gives your mind a routine to fall back on when things feel uncertain. Instead of chaos, there is structure. Instead of doubt, there is direction. Consistency is the hidden power of discipline. Small actions repeated daily may feel insignificant, but they reshape how your brain sees you. Every time you follow through, even when it's uncomfortable, your mind records evidence. It says, I do what I say I'll do. Over time, this evidence builds trust. And self-trust is the foundation of confidence, not loud confidence, not performative confidence, real confidence, the kind that stays steady when things go wrong. When you break promises to yourself, even small ones, your mind notices that too. It learns that your words are flexible, optional, emotional. This weakens self-trust and strengthens self-doubt. Discipline reverses that pattern. It turns your commitments into anchors. You no longer rely on external pressure or excitement to move forward. You rely on identity. This is who I am. This is what I do. Discipline also simplifies decision-making. When your actions are structured, there is less mental debate. You don't waste energy deciding whether to act. You save that energy for execution. This reduces mental fatigue and emotional resistance. Your mind becomes calmer because it's not constantly arguing with itself. The clarity of structure replaces the chaos of indecision. There is also freedom in discipline that most people don't expect. While motivation feels exciting, it often leads to burnout. Discipline, when done correctly, creates rhythm. You know when to work, when to rest, and when to push. This rhythm protects your mental health. It prevents extremes. It allows progress without exhaustion. Discipline isn't about being harsh with yourself, it's about being reliable. In moments of failure or slow progress, discipline becomes even more valuable. Motivation disappears when results are delayed. Discipline stays. It reminds you that progress is not always visible, but it is always happening beneath the surface. This mindset keeps you grounded. Instead of panicking, you stay patient. Instead of quitting, you adjust and continue. Discipline also changes how you see challenges. Instead of obstacles, they become part of the process. You stop taking difficulty personally. Hard days don't mean something is wrong, they mean you are doing something meaningful. This perspective strengthens mental resilience. Your brain learns that discomfort is not a signal to stop, it's a signal to stay consistent. As discipline becomes part of your identity, your confidence grows quietly. You stop needing validation. You stop seeking constant reassurance. You trust yourself because you've proven through action that you are dependable. This trust creates inner peace. You are no longer at war with your own intentions. You and your actions are aligned. In 2026, replacing motivation with discipline is one of the most powerful mental upgrades you can make. It moves you from emotional decision-making to intentional living. It transforms your mind from reactive to stable. And over time, the consistency you practice becomes the confidence you feel. You are always talking to yourself, even when you're not aware of it. In quiet moments and stressful ones, in success and in failure, there is a voice narrating your experience. It explains what things mean, why they happened, and what they say about you. This inner narrative is not harmless background noise. It is the lens through which you see yourself in the world, and whether that voice builds you or breaks you will determine how far you go in 2026. Most people don't realize how much power their language has because it feels automatic. Thoughts show up uninvited, and because they sound familiar, they feel true. But familiar does not mean accurate. Many of the limits people live inside are not imposed by circumstances, but by the stories they repeat. The mind believes what it hears often, not what is correct. That's why awareness is the first step toward control. The words you use internally shape your emotional response before you ever take action. When something goes wrong and your mind immediately says, I can't do this, your body responds with tension, hesitation, and fear. When the same situation is met with, I'm learning how to handle this, the emotion shifts. There is curiosity instead of panic, possibility instead of shutdown. The situation didn't change, but the meaning did. And meaning is what drives behavior. In 2026, noticing your language is not about being positive all the time. It's about being precise. "I can't" is usually not true. It is a conclusion drawn from discomfort. "I'm stuck" often means I'm unsure what the next step is. These phrases feel final, heavy, and absolute. They close doors in your mind. When you replace them with language that reflects reality more accurately, you reopen those doors. "I'm learning" acknowledges effort. "I'm in transition" acknowledges movement. Even if it's slow, your inner narrative creates identity. The way you describe yourself internally becomes the way you show up externally. If your story is, "I always mess things up," your mind looks for evidence to confirm it. If your story is, "I figure things out eventually," your mind stays engaged longer. This isn't wishful thinking, it's psychological alignment. The brain seeks consistency between belief and action. Many people sabotage themselves not through lack of ability, but through harsh self-talk. They criticize themselves for mistakes, rush themselves through growth, and judge themselves for not being further along. This constant mental pressure drains energy and confidence. A mind under attack cannot perform at its best. Taking control of your inner narrative means choosing to be constructive instead of cruel. Growth does not require self-punishment. There is also a difference between accountability and self-attack. Accountability says, "This didn't work. What can I change?" Self-attack says, "This didn't work because something is wrong with me." One leads to progress. The other leads to paralysis. When you learn to separate your behavior from your identity, your inner voice becomes a coach instead of a critic. It corrects without destroying. The stories you tell yourself in difficult moments matter the most. When plans fall apart, when progress feels slow, when effort isn't rewarded immediately, your inner narrative steps in to explain why. If the explanation is rooted in hopelessness, your motivation collapses. If it's rooted in learning, your resilience grows. Over time, these explanations compound into belief systems, and belief systems shape destiny. Taking control of your inner narrative also means questioning old assumptions. Many of the stories you repeat were formed years ago. Based on limited experiences or external opinions, they may no longer be relevant, but they continue to influence your choices. In 2026, growth requires updating those stories. You are not the same person you were when those beliefs were formed. Your narrative should evolve as you do. Language also affects how you handle uncertainty. When you say, "I don't know what I'm doing," your mind interprets that as danger. When you say, "I'm figuring it out as I go," your mind interprets that as exploration. The second keeps you moving, the first keeps you frozen. Progress rarely comes from certainty, it comes from willingness. And willingness is supported by supportive self-talk. As you become more intentional with your inner language, you'll notice a shift in emotional regulation. You recover faster from setbacks. You don't spiral as deeply. You pause before reacting. This doesn't mean challenges disappear. It means they no longer define you. Your inner voice becomes a stabilizing force instead of a source of chaos. The most powerful part of controlling your inner narrative is that it gives you back choice. You may not control every outcome, but you always control the meaning you assign, and the meaning you assign determines how you move forward. When your inner voice aligns with growth, patience, and truth, your limits begin to dissolve. The stories you tell yourself stop being cages and start becoming pathways. A comfortable mind seeks ease, familiarity, and reassurance. It looks for paths that feel safe and predictable, even if they lead nowhere new. Comfort is tempting because it promises relief in the short term, but it quietly limits growth. A resilient mind operates differently. It does not chase hardship, but it does not avoid it either. It understands that challenge is not an enemy, it is a teacher. And in 2026, the real mental upgrade is learning to build resilience instead of designing your life around comfort. Resilience is often misunderstood as toughness or emotional numbness. In reality, it is adaptability. It is the ability to face stress, uncertainty, and pressure without collapsing or quitting. Mental strength is not about eliminating stress from your life. That goal is unrealistic and ironically creates more anxiety. Mental strength is about knowing deeply and confidently that when stress arrives, you have the capacity to respond rather than react. A comfortable mind avoids challenge because challenge threatens identity. It exposes weaknesses, creates uncertainty, and risks failure. The mind interprets these signals as danger and looks for escape. This is why many people procrastinate, quit early, or settle for less than they're capable of. It's not a lack of ambition, it's a learned avoidance of discomfort. Over time, avoidance reinforces fear. The more you run from difficulty, the more powerful it seems. A resilient mind is built through exposure, not avoidance. Every time you face a hard moment and stay present, something shifts inside you. Your nervous system learns that discomfort is survivable. Your mind learns that panic is not required. This learning doesn't happen through positive thinking. It happens through experience. When you don't run, your brain records evidence. I've been here before and I survived. That evidence becomes emotional stability. Stress in the right amount is not damaging. Chronic, unmanaged stress is the problem. Short-term stress, faced intentionally, builds capacity. It stretches your mental limits the same way resistance training strengthens muscle. Without resistance, there is no growth. When you choose resilience over comfort, you stop interpreting difficulty as a sign that something is wrong. You begin to see it as part of the process of becoming stronger. Resilience changes how you relate to failure. A comfortable mind sees failure as a verdict. A resilient mind sees it as feedback. When something doesn't work, the resilient mind asks, "What can this teach me?" instead of "What does this say about me?" This shift protects your self-worth while still demanding improvement. It allows you to stay engaged instead of emotionally withdrawing. One of the most powerful aspects of resilience is emotional regulation. When pressure hits, the untrained mind panics, thoughts race, emotions spike, decisions become impulsive. A resilient mind slows down. It creates space between stimulus and response. That space is where control lives. You don't eliminate emotion, you manage it. You feel stress without letting it dictate your behavior. Resilience also builds confidence in a way comfort never can. Comfort-based confidence depends on conditions staying favorable. Resilient confidence is internal. It comes from knowing you can handle disruption. When life changes, when plans fall apart, when certainty disappears, resilient people don't lose themselves. They adjust, they recalibrate, they move forward anyway. Every hard moment you don't run from strengthens this mindset. The conversation you don't avoid, the task you don't delay, the responsibility you don't escape. Each one rewires your brain incrementally. The mind stops associating discomfort with danger and starts associating it with growth. Over time, this rewiring becomes identity. You stop seeing yourself as fragile and start seeing yourself as capable. Building resilience also requires patience with yourself. Growth through challenge is not immediate. There will be moments when stress feels overwhelming and progress feels slow. Resilience does not mean you never struggle. It means you struggle without giving up. It means you allow discomfort to exist without letting it define you. This patience is what keeps resilience sustainable rather than exhausting. A resilient mind does not seek chaos, but is not threatened by it. It understands that stability is not the absence of problems, but the ability to remain grounded while solving them. This mindset transforms how you approach your goals. You stop waiting for perfect conditions. You start moving with imperfect ones. And that willingness creates momentum. In 2026, comfort will be easy to find and costly to maintain. Distractions, shortcuts, and avoidance will always be available. Resilience, however, must be built intentionally. It is forged in moments when you choose presence over escape, effort over ease, and growth over relief. Each of those choices strengthens your mind until stress no longer controls you, because you've proven to yourself that you can handle it. The world is designed to pull your attention toward what feels good now, not what will matter later. Quick wins, instant feedback, immediate comfort, these are the currencies of a short-term world. Everything is optimized for speed and reaction. But mental upgrades don't happen at the speed of convenience. They happen when you resist the urge for temporary relief and choose actions that serve your future self, even when no one is watching and no applause is coming. Thinking long-term requires a different relationship with discomfort. Short-term thinking asks, how do I feel right now? Long-term thinking asks, who am I becoming? The first prioritizes relief. The second prioritizes alignment. Many decisions that sabotage growth make sense emotionally in the moment. Skipping effort, avoiding difficult conversations, choosing distraction over discipline. They feel good now, but they quietly borrow from your future. Long-term thinking is the decision to stop borrowing and start investing. Growth is rarely dramatic. It doesn't announce itself. It doesn't trend. It happens in repetition, in routines that look ordinary from the outside. This is why it often feels boring and unpopular. The mind wants stimulation, novelty, and reassurance that progress is happening. Long-term thinkers learn to tolerate the silence. They understand that just because something feels slow doesn't mean it isn't working. They don't confuse excitement with effectiveness. In a short-term world, validation becomes addictive. Likes, praise, quick results, and external approval provide temporary boosts, but they create dependency. When validation disappears, motivation collapses. Long-term thinkers free themselves from this cycle. They measure progress internally. They ask, am I more consistent? Am I more capable? Am I more aligned than I was before? These metrics don't fluctuate daily, but they compound powerfully over time. Patience is often misunderstood as passivity. In reality, it is active restraint. It is the discipline to keep showing up without needing immediate proof that it's working. This kind of patience builds mental strength because it trains the brain to delay gratification without anxiety. You learn to stay committed even when the outcome is uncertain. That ability becomes an advantage in a world addicted to instant results. Long-term thinking also reshapes how you handle setbacks. Short-term minds interpret obstacles as failures. Long-term minds see them as data points. When something doesn't work, the question isn't, why is this happening to me, but what is this teaching me for what comes next? This mindset keeps you engaged instead of discouraged. You don't abandon the process because the timeline extends. You adjust and continue. There is a quiet confidence that comes from long-term thinking. It doesn't need to prove itself daily. It doesn't react to every opinion or comparison. It knows that real progress often looks impressive in the beginning. This confidence is grounded, not emotional. It comes from understanding cause and effect over time. You trust the process because you understand how progress works, not because you feel inspired. Thinking long-term also simplifies decision-making. When your future vision is clear, many short-term temptations lose their appeal. You don't have to argue with yourself constantly because the trade-offs are obvious. Temporary relief is no longer tempting when you see its long-term cost. This clarity reduces mental noise and strengthens self-control without force. Long-term thinkers also accept loneliness at times. When growth paths are quiet, they are often misunderstood. Not everyone will support choices that don't offer immediate payoff. But long-term thinkers are comfortable standing alone because they are standing with their future self. They value consistency over consensus. This independence of thought is a powerful mental upgrade. Over time, long-term thinking changes how time itself feels. You stop rushing, you stop panicking, you stop feeling behind. Instead, you focus on trajectory rather than speed. You understand that progress is not about how fast you move, but about whether you're moving in the right direction. This perspective brings calm in a world that constantly urges urgency. Patience becomes power when it is paired with action. Small, consistent steps taken over long periods create results that short-term efforts cannot match. This is the kind of power that doesn't fade because it isn't built on hype. It's built on habit, integrity, and trust in the process. In a short-term world, thinking long-term is a quiet rebellion. It requires discipline, self-awareness, and courage. But for those willing to make that shift, the reward is mental stability, sustained growth, and a life that compounds instead of resets. Your mind is not neutral territory. It is constantly being shaped, influenced, and trained by what you allow into it. Every conversation you engage in, every piece of content you consume, every comparison you make leaves a mark. Most people underestimate this impact because it feels passive, but it is one of the most powerful forces shaping their thoughts, emotions, and decisions. In 2026, protecting your mental environment is not a luxury, it is a necessity. The mind absorbs more than you realize. Even when you think you're just scrolling, listening, or passing time, your brain is processing patterns, tones, and messages. Over time, these inputs form beliefs, expectations, and emotional habits. If your mental environment is filled with negativity, chaos, outrage, and comparison, your inner world will reflect that. No matter how strong or disciplined you think you are, conversations matter more than people admit. The people you regularly interact with influence how you see what's possible. Constant exposure to complaints, gossip, fear, or cynicism trains your mind to focus on problems rather than solutions. This doesn't mean avoiding people who are struggling. It means recognizing the difference between supportive honesty and emotional drain. Protecting your mental environment sometimes means limiting access, not out of arrogance, but out of self-respect. Content is another powerful influence. The modern world offers unlimited information, but unlimited does not mean healthy. News cycles thrive on urgency and fear. Social platforms reward comparison and outrage. Overconsumption keeps your mind in a reactive state, constantly responding instead of reflecting. When your attention is always being pulled outward, it becomes harder to hear your own thoughts. Mental clarity requires space, and space requires boundaries. Comparison is one of the most subtle yet damaging pollutants in the mental environment. It disguises itself as motivation, but often produces anxiety and inadequacy. When you constantly measure your progress against curated versions of other people's lives, your mind loses perspective. You forget that growth is personal, nonlinear, and context-dependent. Protecting your mental environment means reminding yourself that someone else's timeline has nothing to do with yours. Being intentional does not mean becoming disconnected from the world. It means choosing what deserves your attention. Attention is finite. Every time you give it to something draining, you take it away from something meaningful. This trade-off happens whether you acknowledge it or not. Intentionality brings awareness to that exchange and allows you to choose differently. Peace is often misunderstood as something you achieve by adding more productivity, more stimulation, more entertainment, more noise to distract from discomfort. In reality, peace is revealed when you remove what overwhelms and exhausts you. It is found in simplification. When mental clutter decreases, emotional regulation improves. You feel calmer not because life is easier, but because your mind is no longer overloaded. Protecting your mental environment also changes how you respond to stress. When your mind is constantly overstimulated, small challenges feel overwhelming. When your environment is calmer, your capacity increases. You respond instead of reacting. You pause instead of panicking. This resilience is not accidental. It is cultivated through conscious choices. Silence plays a critical role here. Silence is not empty, it is restorative. It allows your mind to process, integrate, and recover. In a world that equates noise with importance, choosing silence can feel uncomfortable at first. But over time, it becomes grounding. It gives you access to your own intuition, values, and priorities. Without silence, your inner voice gets drowned out. Protecting your mental environment also means being mindful of how you speak to yourself after consuming something. Certain content triggers self-doubt, anger, or fear. If you notice consistent emotional shifts after specific inputs, that's information your mind is telling you what it needs less of. Listening to that signal is an act of self-care, not weakness. Another important aspect is emotional boundaries. You are allowed to disengage from situations that drain you. You are allowed to step back from constant debates, negativity, and emotional labor that isn't yours to carry. Protecting your mental environment does not mean you don't care. It means you care enough about your well-being to choose sustainability over burnout. As you become more intentional, you'll notice a shift in mental clarity and energy. Thoughts slow down. Focus improves. Emotional reactions soften. This creates a positive feedback loop. The calmer your mind, the better your decisions. The better your decisions, the more stable your life feels. Stability then reinforces peace. In 2026, protecting your mental environment is one of the most powerful upgrades you can make. You don't need to consume less of everything, just less of what drains you. When you remove unnecessary noise, comparison, and negativity, you make room for clarity, growth, and peace. And that peace becomes the foundation for everything else you build. Becoming someone you can trust is the foundation of every real mental upgrade. It is the quiet agreement you make with yourself when no one else is watching. It's easy to talk about discipline, resilience, and long-term thinking, but none of them last if you don't believe in your own word. Self-trust is not built through big promises or dramatic moments. It is built through small, consistent follow-through. And once it's built, it changes how you see yourself and what you believe is possible. Every promise you keep to yourself strengthens your mind because it sends a clear signal: I am reliable, I can depend on me. That signal shapes your identity more powerfully than motivation or external validation ever could. When you say you'll do something and you do it even when it's uncomfortable or inconvenient, your brain records evidence. Over time, that evidence compounds into confidence. Not the loud kind that needs approval, but the steady kind that holds firm under pressure. Every promise you break weakens that trust. Even the small ones matter, saying you'll wake up early and not doing it, saying you'll stop procrastinating and delaying again. These moments seem insignificant, but your mind is always watching. It learns patterns. If your words are optional, your mind stops taking you seriously. That's where doubt creeps in, not because you lack ability, but because you lack consistency with yourself. Confidence doesn't come from winning. Winning is external and often temporary. Confidence comes from knowing you won't quit on yourself when it gets hard. That knowledge is earned, not imagined. It comes from showing up on days when progress feels invisible, from keeping your word when excuses would be easier, from continuing even when no one is applauding. This is the kind of confidence that doesn't collapse when things go wrong. Self-trust also changes how you handle failure. When you trust yourself, failure doesn't feel like a threat to your identity. It feels like part of the process. You don't spiral into self-criticism or give up at the first setback. You adjust, recommit, and keep going. You know that even if the outcome is uncertain, your effort is not wasted because you're becoming someone dependable. Many people underestimate how deeply broken self-trust affects their lives. It shows up as procrastination, overthinking, and hesitation, not because they are lazy or incapable, but because their mind has learned that intentions don't always turn into action. Rebuilding that trust requires patience and honesty. It starts with making smaller promises and keeping them consistently. You don't rebuild trust by being perfect. You rebuild it by being reliable. When you trust yourself, decision-making becomes easier. You don't second-guess every choice because you believe you'll handle the consequences. You stop needing constant reassurance from others. You become more decisive, not because you know everything, but because you trust your ability to adapt. This reduces anxiety and increases clarity. Your mind feels safer because it knows you won't abandon yourself under pressure. Self-trust also deepens resilience. When life gets difficult, people with low self-trust tend to quit early or look for escape. People with high self-trust stay present. They don't panic as easily because they've proven to themselves that they can endure discomfort. This doesn't mean they don't feel stress or fear. It means those feelings don't control them. Keeping promises to yourself is not about being rigid or harsh. It's about alignment. It's about choosing goals that reflect your values and honoring them with action. When your actions match your intentions, your inner world stabilizes. There's less internal conflict, less guilt, less self-judgment. Your energy is no longer wasted on arguing with yourself. This kind of mental upgrade changes how you live. You stop chasing motivation and start relying on commitment. You stop comparing yourself to others and start measuring progress by integrity. You stop fearing hard days because you know you won't quit. Life becomes less chaotic, not because it's easier, but because you are stronger inside. In 2026, becoming someone you can trust is the most important upgrade you can make. It affects every area of your life, your work, your relationships, your health, your peace of mind. When you trust yourself, you move differently, you think differently, you choose differently, and as a result, you live differently. Becoming someone you can trust is the most important relationship you will ever build, and it is one that shapes every other area of your life. You can have talent, intelligence, and opportunity, but without self-trust, all of it remains unstable. Self-trust is the quiet confidence that you will show up, follow through, and stand by yourself when things become difficult. It is not something you are born with. It is something you earn through consistent action over time. Self-trust begins with honesty, not the kind you perform for others, but the kind you practice in private. It starts when you acknowledge the gap between what you say you will do and what you actually do. Many people avoid this awareness because it's uncomfortable, but awareness is not punishment. It is the starting point of change. You cannot build trust with yourself if you refuse to see where it has been broken. Once you see it clearly, you gain the power to repair it. Every promise you make to yourself is a contract. When you keep it even in small ways, your mind learns that your word matters. When you break it, your mind learns to doubt you. Over time, these signals accumulate. Self-trust is not destroyed by one big failure. It erodes through repeated small betrayals. Skipping the workout you committed to, delaying the task you promised you'd start, choosing comfort over commitment again and again. These moments seem harmless, but they quietly teach your mind that your intentions are negotiable. Rebuilding self-trust does not require grand gestures, it requires consistency. The most effective way to become someone you can trust is to make smaller promises and keep them without exception. When you say you'll do something, do it, especially when no one else knows about it. This private integrity is where confidence is born. Confidence is not arrogance or bravado. It is calm certainty rooted in evidence. And that evidence comes from follow through. Self-trust changes how you experience difficulty. When you don't trust yourself, challenges feel overwhelming. You doubt your ability to handle discomfort, uncertainty, or failure. When you do trust yourself, challenges feel manageable. Not easy, but manageable. You know that even if things go wrong, you won't abandon yourself. That knowledge creates emotional safety, and emotional safety allows you to take risks, grow, and try again after setbacks. One of the most powerful effects of self-trust is decision-making clarity. When you trust yourself, you stop overthinking every choice. You don't need to predict every outcome because you believe in your ability to adapt. This reduces anxiety and mental fatigue. You move forward with intention instead of hesitation. You stop seeking constant approval from others because you've learned to rely on your own judgment. Self-trust also strengthens discipline. Discipline is often misunderstood as force or self-control, but at its core it is trust in action. When you trust yourself, discipline feels natural. You follow through because you respect your own commitments. You don't need to motivate yourself endlessly because your identity supports your behavior. You act not because you feel like it, but because you decided and you trust that decision. There will be times when you fall short. Becoming someone you can trust does not mean perfection. It means accountability without self-destruction. When you break a promise, you don't spiral into guilt or self-hatred. You acknowledge it, adjust, and recommit. Trust is rebuilt through repair, not denial. How you respond after failure matters more than the failure itself. Self-trust also influences how you set goals. When you trust yourself, you stop setting goals to impress others or prove your worth. You set goals that align with your values and capacity. You choose sustainability over intensity. This alignment reduces burnout and increases consistency. You're no longer fighting yourself, you're working with yourself. Over time, self-trust reshapes your identity. You stop seeing yourself as someone who starts but doesn't finish. You stop labeling yourself as inconsistent or unreliable. Instead, you begin to see yourself as dependable, capable, steady. This shift in identity reinforces behavior, creating a powerful feedback loop. The more you trust yourself, the more you act in ways that justify that trust. Becoming someone you can trust also improves your relationships. When you respect your own word, you naturally respect the boundaries of others. You communicate more clearly. You show up more consistently. You don't overpromise or disappear under pressure. People feel safe around those who trust themselves because that trust radiates outward. In a world full of noise, distraction, and external pressure, self-trust is grounding. It keeps you anchored when opinions shift and circumstances change. It reminds you who you are and what you stand for. You don't need to chase confidence because it grows quietly from within. Becoming someone you can trust is not a single decision, it is a daily practice. It is choosing integrity over impulse, commitment over comfort, action over excuse. And as that practice compounds, something powerful happens. You stop doubting your ability to build the life you want. You stop waiting for permission or perfect conditions. You move forward with calm assurance. When you become someone you can trust, you don't just think differently. You live differently. Your choices align with your values. Your actions reinforce your identity, and your confidence know